Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunathaya Nathaya Sitaya Pataye Namaha Anjananandanam Veeram Janaki Shokanashanam Kapisham Akshahantaram Vande Lanka Bhayankaram. So this is the drama bit of the Ramayana. Marich, the golden deer, chose to die by Ramchandraji rather than at the hands of Ravana. And this, we saw last week that this is what defines a Rakshasa. They put their interest above. I mean, I'm sure Ravana would have come up with some kind of ploy if Marich had said no to him, but not contributing to somebody else's heartache definitely falls onto dharma, right? And deliberately contributing to heartache is definitely a dharma. So protecting yourself is a dharma. Sorry, be very clear. Protecting yourself is dharma. But he knew he was going to die anyways. But yes, dying by Ramchandraji sends him to Saket. But thinking of Ramchandraji as he died would have also sent him to Saket, even if killed by some other hand. So in today's world, I think a lot of people can completely relate to marriage. And this is why it's Kali Yuga. Because it's so easy to relate to marriage. Like it's given the choice, and he chose to die by Ramchandraji's hand. And so even at that point, the arrows already shot him. He could have not screamed out, right? He could have just died. He could not have followed through on Ravana's plan. Ravana's plan was not only to get Ramchandraji away, but Lakshman away, because Lakshman, even though younger brother, by most means and criteria, was as a good warrior as Ramchandraji. If not as good, very fractionally less. So still very capable of protecting Sitaji. And so here too, you see that Marich, he has a choice. And he continues to say, Hey Ram, no, sorry, Hey Sita, Hey Lakshman. So now the minute Sitaji hears this, different Ramayans now, this is one of the major differences between Ramayans. Most places, the storyline is fairly similar. Dialogue is also fairly similar. But here, there's quite drastic differences. So in Tulsi Ramayan, that usually Guruji is following, it just says that Sita spoke harsh words. So what's the exact conversation? Sitaji hears this call in Ramchandraji's voice, her name and Lakshman's name, and she immediately says to Lakshman that Ram's in trouble, go help. And immediately Lakshman says, it's a trick. Ramchandraji can handle one asura. He can handle 1,000 asuras. So obviously he can handle one asura. It's like, you had that much faith you should have. And if you see, last week when we were talking about this, I myself said that when Sita was thinking to herself, not that she's come so deluded, she also doesn't realize there is a potential that it's a asura in disguise. Sitaji herself thinks, well, if it is an asura, Ramchandraji can handle it, can destroy him, can he, it's not really a threat. But at this point in time, when she hears his voice call out, then the force of emotions, she says, go and help. Exactly what she herself thought and knew before the event, Lakshman is saying, but of course he can handle one asura. That's just ridiculous. I'm not going to insult my brother by going and saying, do you need help? Is it plus he gave me his orders. His orders were very clear, and that was to stay here. And they said at this point, Tulsidasji says the conversation. After this point, Tulsidasji says, Sita spoke harsh words. In Valmiki Ramayana, the extent to what Sitaji says is written elaborately. And so first there's the franticness of how could you not want to help him, and that, you claim to be so loyal, these kind of things. And then finally, when none of that argument is working, and this is what our mind does, right? And you see the exact same frame of mind in Arjuna in chapter 1 of the Gita. Like Arjuna starts with what is the first thing Arjuna says? That to kill is a dharma, and then on such a scale is a dharma. And then, Krishna doesn't reply. And then he goes into, not only is it killing, it's killing people like Guru and Bhishma Pitama, who should be worshipped with flowers. That exact words comes in chapter 2, but the sentiment, and Krishna says nothing. And then, what about the whole of society? Because the men are going to get destroyed, and then it's just the women pending with their children, and then, and then Krishna doesn't say anything. And then what about the next generation? And then, so when we in a frame of mind where we so desperately want other people to agree with us, then when they don't agree with us, our argument just becomes more, like stronger or more, usually because we are being emotional in wanting the other person to agree with us. Our logic is not so sound. So it's usually emotion driving the logic. And so if we don't get more logical, we become more emotional. But we guise it with some kind of logic because we have enough intelligence to do so. So Sitaji too, it's that same thing that, you're in a state of panic. Arjuna is in the state of panic that he has to fight this battle. Sita's in a state of panic that nothing should be happening to Ramchandraji. Some will say it's guilt that she sent him, and so it's her fault now if something happens to him. Possible, right? All of us do feel guilt. All of us do have regrets for things we do and say. Some say it's just her absolute love and attachment to him, that, that concern that we would have for a loved one, and that natural anxiety that we don't want anything bad to happen to a loved one. And some write very clearly that this is the play of Maya. Just like how KK had to fall into that sense of insecurity and then jealousy, and then that led to Ramchandraji being exiled, and that was just the hand of fate, you can say, right? Destiny playing its part for things to go the way they need to go. Here too, it's just the play of mind. Sita had to have been in such a worked up state of mind to say something that harsh to make Lakshman leave. Because you must remember, Lakshman is Vairagya. Last week I gave such a good explanation of how Lakshman is Vairagya. Vairagya means you're very objective in your thinking. And so, go help Ram? No, he doesn't need help. You should go, you're not being a good brother. You just worried. I'm a great brother. You a great wife. You just upset right now. No need to do anything. I'll stay right here. You should go. Something happens to him, nothing's going to happen to him. He's very clear in his thinking. He's extremely objective. That's what Vairagya means, that you have that objectivity, you have that clarity, you have that presence of mind. When we have vairagya, we have presence of mind. But if an emotion comes, then we lose presence of mind. we lose that centered, that when centered in that self, when emotion comes. If emotion's not there and we have vairagya, we're very centered. And we can't be shaken. Emotion comes, emotion shakes us. And then after the emotion shakes us, whatever anybody else says, shakes us more. And so that centered is gone. So now Sitaji had to have become so upset that she says something so extreme that it would invoke emotion in Lakshman. Because Vairagya wouldn't react. That's the beautiful thing about Vairagya. It doesn't react. Like we're watching, and so you can see this, right? Like maybe a parent, child, maybe a spouse, maybe even siblings. You watch them doing something very quirky. You just sit there watching. You know they're going to do this next, and like we know then they're going to regret it, and we're still just watching. Like Vairagya can be very patient, very objective, very Sakshi Bhav type. But emotion won't. Emotion won't let us. Emotion will make us react. So Lakshman would not go until something so horrible that was said that it invoked an emotion in him. Then only he'd lose his centeredness. So what does she say? That you had desired me the whole time. This is something Lakshman can't hear because she's Ramchandraji's wife. And his absolute devotion to Ramchandraji, there's no way such a thought could have ever entered his mind. But two, and people really don't talk about this enough, Lakshman's married to Urmila, who's Sita's sister. Bharat and Shatrughan are married to first cousins, Madhavi and Shwetakirti. But Urmila's her actual sister. Not cousin sister, sister. And Lakshman's married to Urmila. How would Urmila feel? And like just as devout as Ramchandraji is to Sita, Lakshman's not stayed in the palace with Urmila because he wanted to serve Ramchandraji, but that doesn't mean his love and his devotion to Urmila is any less. And so to, even see your wife's sister in any other form but sister or mother, usually if they are older. And then your own brother's wife, of course, you'd see them only as that because older, there's a sense of respect and reverence, but even just by virtue of family, there's that sense of, oneness that you feel with family members. And then to be like this, it's such in that moment that because Lakshman would never have even thought of it. And remember, his mother had said to him when he was leaving his palace that don't let a negative thought enter your mind, even in sleep. That was her instruction to Lakshman when Lakshman was leaving. And because he couldn't control what happens to him in sleep, he stayed awake. And he stays awake for 14 years. And this siddhi of that Lakshman develops is so rare. There are other people who have developed the siddhis where they didn't need sleep, but it's certainly not a common one that for people to have that siddhi. Because there's so much comfort in sleep. Never mind the sleeping at night, even napping during the day, so much comfort. And we've all experienced that when it's so, it just kind of pulls you, like, sometimes in the class you all would have experienced, we've all experienced it in satsang, like you want to stay awake, but that pull of sleep can be so strong. That to have that strength to fight it, and not just fight it and stay awake watching TV or playing cards or, but stay awake guarding Ramchandraji and Sitaji. And they've already been in the forest for 13 years. 13 years he's been so vigilant of his thoughts because he is following the instruction of his mother, who said that only you have this privilege, Lakshman, to go into the forest with Ramchandraji. If he was here in the palace, I don't know if you remember, I did say this when he was leaving, when they left Ayodhya. If Ram was in the palace, then there's somebody serving him in the court, somebody serving him in his room, somebody serving him when he goes to ride the horses, the stable boys, there's somebody serving him food, there's somebody serving him this. So to do all the seva that would be required for Ramchandraji, there'd be good, like 20 people. But in the forest, you get to do all the seva by yourself. Like nobody else gets this opportunity. Who's saying this? Sumitra Mata to Lakshman as they leaving for exile. And so, since you are so blessed to get to have this opportunity to do all the sevas for him, you have to do it with such utmost purity, and therefore the instruction that don't let a single negative thought enter your mind. And you must remember, if Lakshman, you've seen, he might, be short-tempered, or he might be outspoken, but obedient to the core. If Ram just looks at him, he stops immediately what he's doing. And that understanding that that's what Ramchandraji wants. Even mid-sentence, he will stop talking if Ram looks at him. Because that obedience, and then same way when mother says, right? Like they've grown up with that feeling of Matrudevo Bhava, that treat mother as Guru, as God. And so following the instructions, plus not just following an instruction, she explained why. Like to honor the privilege of being given this opportunity. And Lakshman sees it, right? Especially because when Bharat comes and Bharat's crying so much, and Mata Kaushalya is crying, and the ministers are crying, and even Guru Vashishta doesn't want to leave because then they don't get to be. So he's seen how much everybody else wants to be with Ram. He knows he is that blessed, and so he's been so diligent in his seva. And then to hear this thought after he's been so diligent in his seva, and he could never have possibly even thought it, the shock, like she would think this, or that possibility of that can exist. Shock is the emotion that makes him waver. Because remember Lakshman's Vairagya. Anger can't make him waver. Desire can't make him waver. But shock, all of us, when we get shocked, we don't know what to think. Mine goes into like, what was my computer saying today? Snap. I was trying to search something, and then it just would freeze, and then it would tell me, snap, oops, we can't reboot. I'm the, it's very funky language my computer was using. For saying snap, right? Or snap, yeah. AWW snap. It's like, that's what happens in our brain when we get shocked. Snap. Or you can't think clearly now. Even put or. Must have been a very friendly programmer. Probably trying to cushion the anger of why isn't it working. Objectivity got lost. Lakshman's objectivity got lost. because of the disorientation he felt by the surprise of her saying that. And then when we lose our center and we let emotion enter, it derails us. Emotions completely derail us. This was the direction we're supposed to be going on. Emotion comes and then showing. Sure. In some Ramayans, it's very dramatic, and Lakshman blocks his ears so he doesn't hear it because it's just so horrendous to hear. In some Ramayans, he's quite firm and he says, stop. Like, there's no need for you to utter another word. But in every Ramayana, it's like, if you want that much, I'll go. And even then, he knows he's breaking Ramchandraji's instruction. And in none of the Ramayans that I have read that does that feature, but in one of the fictional books written based on the Ramayana that I have read, they say that Lakshman has guilt about this till they go back to Ayodhya. Because it's the last straw, right? If Lakshman was there, well, we don't know what would have happened, but it's highly likely that nothing would have happened to Sitaji. So, in Valmiki Ramayana, he leaves. In one of the other Ramayans, he draws this line. It's not there in original Valmiki Ramayana. And again, in one of the fictional books I've read, they say that Lakshman was the one that built the hut, and he created a kind of a pathway from the forest to the hut, and he would keep that pathway free of stones, and so that it's easy for Ramchandraji and Sitaji to walk up and down. They would go to the river to bathe, they would go to... So he created this pathway, and since he created it, they would refer to that as Lakshman's Rekha. But Rekha means line, and it was like a road, so it was like the pathway that he created between the hut and the river. And so that was like we on Modi Road. It was Lakshman's road. Why? Because he built it for Ramchandraji and Sitaji to have easy access. They didn't have, he cut down the trees, he made sure everything was, he built it quite lovingly for them. But that's also a fictional story. Where does it come from? One of the other Ramayana. So is it true? Probably. Why? Because the Ramayana hasn't happened once. Have I said this in any of the classes? Yeah. Every kalpa it's happened. And in every kalpa, it happens little differently. And so maybe in the kalpa where Valmiki was there, Lakshman didn't draw the Rekha. But in one of the other kalpas, he definitely would have. And so what's this Lakshman Rekha? He takes a stick and he draws a circle around the hut. And he uses the power of his tapas to create a protective shield that nothing can enter this circle and cross the line. Now remember, what was the power of his tapas? He hasn't slept for 13 years. Like that kind of strength of his mind, that protective shield would be phenomenal. Also that absolute devotion and loyalty to Ramchandraji, that absolute, there is nothing else that he wanted. There's no other desire in Lakshman's heart except Ramji's seva. Like, just that itself makes his mind so strong. But in addition to that, he left Urmila and has been living as a brahmachari in the forest for 13 years. That also gives immense tapas. Control of any desire gives us strength. Sexual desire is probably one of the hardest to control. And so controlling that gives more strength. The harder the desire is to control, or the ability to control it gives the mind more strength. Then, even all the small desires. He won't eat till Ramchandraji and Sitaji. He won't, well, he didn't sleep. He won't talk unless it was required. He won't. So there was discipline in sleep. There was discipline in food. There was discipline in speech. There was discipline in even standing straight and not fidgeting, because he was a watchman. You don't have to sit straight, relax. But tapas, right? That tapas, that to be, because even something like that, when we hold ourselves upright and then to just, like that, even just holding ourselves upright, strength. And then so absolute. So look at the levels of tapas Lakshman has done, like in terms of mind, in terms of body, in terms of his devotion and his loyalties. So if Lakshman draws a line and says no one or nothing can enter, not even a mosquito is getting in. And even if the wind is being sent with any evil intention, even the wind won't go in. And then, like, this is such a beautiful comparison between Marich and Lakshman. Like, Lakshman has to leave Sitaji, and he leaves behind the strength of his tapas to serve her. Marich, where he could have served Ram, served Ram. And then whatever he did, like all that, because Marich, when he was thrown by Ramchandraji's arrow, he used to live in so much fear of Ram that he ended up thinking about Ramji with such intensity out of fear for so many years that would have given him a certain amount of tapas. Because just thinking about Bhagwan with intensity creates some strength of mind. And that would have all been gone when he chooses to deceive Sitaji and Ramji. But here Lakshman, who hasn't faltered or in any way, when he does get accused and he is leaving, leaves behind himself his strength of his tapas. Even the Ramayana starts with Naraji asking Valmiki, do you think anyone would take your sins? But even here, like, we wouldn't take anyone else's. And in the same way, would we give our punya? Would we easily, happily give our punya to somebody? Very few have, huh? There are stories. Yeah, Dronacharya in the Mahabharata, as you all remember, gave his punya for Ashwatthama to get Chiranjeevi Bhav. There are. Savitri gives her punya to save her husband from death. Such a beautiful story. It's To give money is so hard. And it's just money. And punya comes with you after death. Like a death scary already. Then give your punya. Will you give? I'm not saying you should. I'm not saying you should. I'm showing you Lakshman's glory. Lakshman gave without being asked, without blinking an eye. Like that purity of his heart. This is why when, I have a slight soft spot for Lakshman, you all can tell when I'm telling the story of the Ramayana. Probably because the very first time I heard the Ramayana from Swamiji in a Bal Vihar camp, I was in charge of this group of boys. And their hero wasn't Ram, their hero was Lakshman. Because Ram was too goody-goody for them. And so to inspire them, I was like, well, Lakshman would do this. And then they would all go charging to do whatever I said. So I think their love for Lakshman got contagious onto me. So I have the 8-year-old boy's love for Lakshman. But really that purity of and that commitment to the instruction that Ram gave him, that if I physically can't do it because my presence here is upsetting you, I leave behind my power of tapas. And so that Lakshman Rekha really is phenomenal. And when Ravana comes, he really can't cross it. Even when he goes close to the Lakshman Rekha, he starts to burn. And so he has to step away from it. Like anything coming into that strength of purity, this is what tapas is. It burns impurity. Right? Like Ravana came, what did he feel? Burn. Why? That's tapas. Impurities will burn in tapas. Even when we go to be in the company of great saints and sages, just being in their company, their tapas burns our negativities. This is why I said that satsang is such an incredible blessing. To have Santa Mahatma is such a blessing. So Lakshman draws this rekha, this line around Sitaji, and he goes off to find Ramchandraji. He knows where the sound came from, so easily goes to find him. We'll finish that bit first. No, we'll go to its state. So the minute Lakshman leaves, Ravana comes disguised as a sannyasi, as a bhikshu. Bhikshu means they beg for food. Sannyasis beg for food. And I have heard Swamiji, Swarupanandaji, saying that one Ravana described as disguised himself as a Swami and ruined the name of Swamis for all of time. Because apparently in India after that, many mothers would say to their children, if you don't do this, Sadhu Baba will come and kidnap you. Just like Sadhu Baba kidnapped Sitaji. And it's interesting how stories and legends, and in today's world, social media, change our thinking and create conditionings and create bias. But in the story of the Ramayana, it's very clear that it's Ravana It's not Sadhu Baba. But still interesting that Swamiji also says that Ravana chose the disguise of a bhikshu because they were so respected. And if you're going to disguise yourself, you disguise yourself as something that's going to work. And then what invokes a sense of trust in people was this. But Ravana taking up really invoked a lot of distrust in it after that. Sometimes people would ask me that when you go to India, like everybody must be, and the minute they see this cloth, they must be treating you so well. They do not. Quite the opposite. You get looked at with quite a bit of suspicion and skepticism and apprehension. Sometimes more than just looked at. You get comments on our life choices, perception. Ravana chose this guise because at that point in time, the perception of sannyasis was one to be respected and trusted. And it was in an era where even someone like Lakshman would have done so much tapas. And so then, of course, a tapasvi, a sannyasi, would do even more tapas. But Ravana didn't do that much tapas. No, well, he did, and then he didn't. So Ravana did lots of tapas to get the power. Then once he started enjoying power, he didn't do tapas. So he couldn't withstand the strength of Lakshman's rekha. It was too strong for him. So he says to Sitaji, come out of the Lakshman rekha and give me the food. Now, if Sitaji was thinking clearly, why can't he enter? Lakshman drew the line, right? To protect her. Why would he insist that she step out of that protection? A sannyasi wouldn't. And a sannyasi whose heart was pure would be able to cross that line. That line is only keeping harm away from Sitaji. This is the other thing that emotion does. So, remember, Sitaji has worked herself up into a state of what Gurudev gives it a one fancy name in chapter 1 of the Gita. Anxiety, psychosis, something. It's a completely made up term, but it sounds very professional. As a psychologist, I assure you there's no such term. Although anxiety is considered a neurosis. And then when somebody is already anxious, it's easy to feed their anxiety. And so what Ravana says is, if you do not feed me, your family will come to harm. And what is she worried about? Exactly that. Now, in her normal state of mind, like even when Shurpanaka was there trying to attack her, she didn't even flinch. It was Ramchandraji's thing. When he had to kill these however many thousands asuras, and she's happily, she didn't fight. She didn't tell Lakshman that side. Like that time, so many Rakshasas are outside. And this is one deer. Like literally 2 nights ago. The story of the Ramayana, it was like a night ago, 2 nights ago. It's like what? I can't remember the number. 1,000 Rakshasas minimum outside. And Ramchandraji standing there all alone fighting 1,000, and she's inside with Lakshman. That time she didn't say, go help him. One deer. And she sends Lakshman away. And then because of that state of mind, so easy to manipulate. We're so easy to manipulate. We make, like we're scared to be vulnerable, but when we get scared, we make ourselves vulnerable. It's so ironic, isn't it? So he knew exactly what to say to make her even more anxious. The more emotions overwhelm us, the more foolish we become. Because she was safe in Lakshman's Rekha. Even though she's all alone, she was safe. Doesn't she have her own tapas? Of course she does. Where's the power of her tapas? Covered by emotion. Not lost. Not lost. Is Sita's mind weak? Not at all. Is Sita's mind available to be strong right now? No. Is it strong? Yes. Right now? No. Which is also an interesting thing about our mind. Just because our mind is strong doesn't mean it's always strong. The minute we let emotion in, and she's now uncentered, she sent Ramchandraji away, and now she sent Lakshman away. Who Lakshman is? Vairagya. She sent Vairagya away. Oh, we're in big trouble if we send Vairagya away. As spiritual seekers, we are working so hard to cultivate Vairagya. Sending it away is like shooting yourself. And why would she do that? Because emotion has come. So it's not her who sends Vairagya away. Emotion in our hearts send Vairagya away. We are constantly exiling Vairagya when we give into strong emotions, any strong emotion. Give into anger, Vairagya is gone. Give into jealousy, Vairagya is gone. Even insecurity is not quite an emotion, it's fear only, but it's gone, Vairagya is gone. So, her own tapasvic strength would have kept Ravana away from her. Lakshman leaves his tapasvic strength, even though Sitaji has her own tapasvic strength, which was strong enough. But she doesn't have access to it. And then she doesn't rely on Lakshman's either because she has sent Lakshman away. And she steps out of his protection. She steps out of that line that keeps us safe. What line? The line of dharma. The line of maybe we can say self-awareness in the most subtle way. The line of righteousness would be the easiest way to see it. Line of dharma, line of righteousness. The line of, we can see this line in so many ways. The line of devotion, the line of knowledge, And in the absolute, most subtle, most purest way, it's the line of self-awareness. Gone. Many times when it's described or portrayed, they'll show a line and then they show it being smudged. And so in our thinking, actually we know exactly where that line is. Even something like when I'm talking to someone, how much I can push or how blunt I can be or how stern I can be. We know where the line is. And then when we allow emotion to smudge it, we don't know now where that line is. We need that self-awareness, we need that to be centered, then we can see that. But when we allow emotion, we can't see the line. And so we'll cross it. Which emotion? Any. Sometimes it's the emotion of pride. We'll definitely smudge that line. Pride makes us very careless. Self-awareness is gone. But even a strong emotion like sorrow, because sorrow makes us self. And feel very, sometimes self-pity, but sometimes the sense of like creating a kind of a cocoon around ourselves. So even there, that line is lost. We wouldn't think pride we'd understand straight away, but sorrow we won't. Right? We think there's nothing wrong with sorrow. I won't do anything bad in sorrow. But that's why in the Gita so much emphasis on do not grieve, because any emotion smudges the line. Not that you can't ever feel an emotion, and that's unrealistic that we won't ever feel an emotion. But that line, don't let the emotion smudge the line. Right? Like growing up in a traditional family, as a kid, you can get angry, but you know the line. You won't cross it. You can only tantrum that much. You can only speak that much. You can only get away with that much. We all know. So even though I'm so angry as a kid, I know when to stop. I know when to swallow the words instead of saying them. But if I don't see that line, if I let the anger go beyond that point, problem. Even with fear, we still know where the line is. Like I'm scared to do it, but this has to be done. And I have to. And then if that gets blurred, I don't have to, I'll run away. Like we just make no progress. It's not like in emotions, we can't see the line. It has to get pretty big for us to have lost sight of those lines. So Sitaji crosses. She crosses the Lakshman Rekha. And Ravana acts very swiftly. So how exactly he kidnaps Sita is, again, very, very different in different Ramayans. In one Ramayana, the worst I would say is Similar to how Draupadi gets dragged into the court, she's pulled by her hair. And another pulled by her, held her wrist, pulled her. In one Ramayana, it's very sweet. It is said that Ravana can't touch Sita. Even if she's upset, her tapas still won't allow her to touch her. And so he picks up the ground that Sita is standing on and carries her and puts her in. This is, I think, a very cool. As you can see the author's love for Sitaji, because like Ravana doesn't have a right to touch her. And so to ensure that Ravana has not touched her, even in the kidnapping process, he carries the ground on which she's standing and takes her. You see the sentiment that a devotee had? So sweet to have that sentiment. And in whichever way he does it, he succeeds. Sita is put in Pushpak Vihan. Translation, airplane. It flies in the air. Pushpak Vihan. But it's far more advanced than our airplanes. And so we think it's fictional. But you know, we thought AI was fictional. You know, in that first Star Trek, where it was Captain James T. Kirk and Spock, when they were shooting that, you didn't have doors that opened by themselves. Can you believe? That's not that long ago, huh? That would have been 80s? It was science fiction that in a spaceship, they'd have doors that would have a sensor and would open. But when they were filming it, they used to have two men opening the doors. Now it's a reality. So much of what we've seen in sci-fi is now already a reality. That's why when we watch those series, we think, gosh, this is outdated. Even your sense of fantasy is outdated. Because for us, it's reality. Pushpak Vihan was an airplane that's like a convertible car. And we think how is that possible? Sure it will happen because it's there in the Ramayana. So it existed. So I'm sure we'll figure it out again at some point. Because Sita can drop him. And also, just as they leave, Jatayu comes. We'll do Jatayu next week. For now, we'll just focus on this. In pretty much all the Ramayans, Sitaji does put up a fight. Ravana is very, very physically strong. So physically would have been hard to fight. There was, when that first Ramana Sagar series of the Ramayana was being screened on TV in India, again, that would have also been in the 80s. So it was the first visual depiction of the Ramayana in TV format. And many of you are familiar that all of India would come to a standstill every week. Sunday mornings? Sunday mornings, 10 o'clock. It used to be screened. And so you had to wait every Sunday morning to see the episodes. And literally, people who didn't own a TV invited themselves over to homes that had a TV And there were some shops that did the seva of having a TV, and whoever wanted to come could come and watch. Again, not that long ago. Huh? So how we all see on our phones. When they were making that Ramayana series, and when they saw the level of devotion with which that series was being watched, and the level of like the moral of the mood of all of India was being set by what was happening at that point in time in the story of the Ramayana on the show. So Ramchandraji and Sitaji got married, then that whole week, everyone was happy. And then, Ramchandraji got exiled, and then that whole week, like all of India was upset. And, it's we smiling now, but we've experienced it. We've experienced, and even like not even that long ago when Friends was being telecasted before it became so easily accessible, the mood would change. Ross and Rachel broke up again, and everybody, like, you got to school the next day and everybody was upset. So what happens like really does set a mood. So the directors and the producers got really scared leading up to this incident in the Ramayana, because already the wedding shifted the mood, already the exile shifted the mood. You have Ravana kidnap Sita now, like what's going to happen? The mood of the whole country is going to be outrage. And so they all got together and they had to do some very serious brainstormings of how to portray this so that you're not causing riots. India, very passionate people, very reactive people. Really need more Vaidagya. You see why I like Lakshman? So in one of the Ramayans, and so they didn't make this up, this is actually true. There is a version of the Ramayana where one evening, before all of this happens, Lakshman is probably cleaning the road or gone to pick food or something. And Ramchandraji tells Sitaji, we need to prepare. Ravana is going to be coming soon. And he can't actually kidnap you. Your purity is too bright for him to come anywhere near you. And since we need to be able to rid the world of Ravana, Leela has to be done. Leela means play, drama, performance. Yeah, I guess today's translation would be, it would be like those Mission Impossible, where you create a narrative that's not real. They wear different face and they wear different ID, and then one of those, what's that called? What's one word to describe how you create a character like that? Anyways, Ramchandraji is telling Sitaji, Mission Impossible style, if you choose to accept this mission, the entire universe is with you. Although some people might speak badly about me. Ramji said, okay, no. So seriously, Ramji is telling Sitaji they have to prepare. And so Ramji says, you have to hide in Agni, and we will bring out of Agni Mayavi Sita. Means the Sita that comes, so the real Sita has gone into fire and is hiding in fire, which is why fire can't burn her. And she can hide in fire because fire can't burn her. And that's her purity, that she can hide in fire because fire can't burn her. And this is also why Hanumanji's tail was never burnt. So Sitaji won't allow any harm to come to Hanumanji. In this Ramayana, all this is said. I'm not saying. This Ramayana is said. This version of the Ramayana, Ramchandraji says, so we should do this now. And Sitaji goes into the fire, and out of the fire comes I don't want to say fake, not a shadow. Like, in the movies, they have the stunt actor, not clone. Stunt actor. No, even some of these very famous people, like Princess Diana used to have a double. It's called a double? That doesn't sound fancy. Doesn't, huh? Understudy? Yeah, but they have to look exactly the same.
They have to know the lines.
They have to know the lines. I don't know. I don't think she's an understudy. It's a double. Yeah, the stunt person, the double, the
body double. Case this, it's body double.
body double. Yeah. So yeah, I know Princess Diana because they interviewed like 2 of her body doubles after her death.
Presidents of United States. In some countries, they've got body double.
Some of them have doubles. Yeah. America, definitely. JFK had. So, but I don't know if all have. You have to find somebody that looks like you. So they brought out Sitaji's body double. So it wasn't the real Sitaji. So this whole kidnapping incident happens to Mayavi Sita. And then it's Mayavi Sita that stays in Lanka for that whole year. And then the reason Ramchandraji doesn't accept Sitaji when she's coming back from Lanka is because now he can get back his real Sita. Because he actually hasn't spent much time with Mayavi Sita. She goes into the fire, next day Ravana comes to kidnap her. And so he knows Sitaji is perfectly safe. And now that it's safe to come out of the fire, he asks for the Agni Pariksha. Agni Pariksha is the fire test in which Mayavi Sita goes into the fire and real Sita comes out of the fire. Now, this version of the Ramayana, the directors found, and they thought it's going to solve 2 problems. 1, people will get upset she got kidnapped. 2, people were going to get furious when Ramchandraji asked for the Agni Pariksha. And so this version of the Ramayana solves both their problems. And so that's the version you will see if you watch that. And I think because that his son made the next Ramayana and his grandson has made this current one that's on at the moment, which apparently is being done well. I think the grandson has made it. I met the grandson. He was telling me he was going to make it. I don't know if he made it or somebody else made it, but they followed that tradition of using this version of the Ramayana. Is it true? Yes. Did Sita get kidnapped? Yes. But was it Mayavi Sita that got kidnapped? Yes. So the real Sita didn't get kidnapped? Maybe. Depends which kalpa, right? But the essence of it is Ravana can't touch Sita. Even though Sita got emotional, even though she had a lapse of vairagya, Sita's mind is strong. We might have lapse, we might have bad days, and it does cause a lot of problems when we have lapses. It doesn't mean we don't have strong mind. Because for the entire time she's in Lanka, they could not break her. She never crossed the line again. ever. One mistake, her whole life. She learned, an amazing learner. We make mistakes, don't learn, make the mistake again, don't learn, make the. Sitaji made mistake once, enough. She learned. She never crossed that line again. I was with Guruji once in a very informal satsang. Really, you all should hear Ramayana from Guruji. It's so incredibly sweet. Guruji's bhakti for every single character in the Ramayana. And once he was saying that he read that why could Ravana kidnap Sitaji? Like, Sitaji's got so much punya and purity. Like, what karma could she possibly have done to warrant Ravana being able to kidnap her? What she did was speak poorly of Lakshman. Why? Lakshman's purity is equal to Sitaji's. And so to doubt it, to accuse him otherwise, is the prop. It's the consequence of that action that created the suffering that she went through. In Puranic literature, it's very insulting Santa brings suffering. So, Lakshman technically wouldn't be considered Santa, but the kind of life he lived, the amount of seva he did, devotion he had, Santa. And so Guruji says that this interpretation of, see how immediate her karma is? She did something, reaction came straight away because she's a highly evolved soul. And so it's done. Did the papa, got the suffering over. Otherwise, you did the papa, then the suffering is waiting. Then you don't know what you did. And so the more evolved we become, the quicker the consequence of our action, so you can finish it. Not that Lakshman would have ever wanted that. And in the Ramayana itself, Sitaji says these exact same words to Trijita, not Hanumanji. Trijita. Trijita is the god, Vibhishan's daughter, who is looking after her in Ashok Vatika. And she regrets not sending Ram to kill the deer. She regrets sending Lakshman with such harsh words. So, so much can reflect on such a simple story. But the hero of today's story is Lakshman. We'll pause here for today. Any questions?
When you're arguing with someone, say a younger person, and you're trying to explain right and wrong to them, they're emotional, and so they keep arguing with you, and they drag you into that emotional state of mind that you don't even, you almost lose the right or wrong yourself. You lose the argument because it becomes too emotional.
Wait, I have to repeat. Nobody can hear. When you're arguing with a young person, she's talking about a teenager because I know who she's talking about. Then they get very emotional and then they keep arguing and then you get emotional and you get dragged into arguing more emotionally.
What do you do? How do you
Don't
stop?
get dragged into
Do
the
you not
emotion.
argue with them?
No,
have
no,
to
you can-
teach them, right?
You can continue talking to them, but don't get dragged into the emotion. That's why I said today's hero is Lakshman. Vairagya. When you're talking, you should have Vairagya. So when they are emotional and we react with emotional, we become highly ineffective in our communication. In this incident, but he represents Vairagya. Lakshman gets emotional very often. Not that Lakshman didn't. When you have Vairagya, it doesn't mean you don't have emotions, but he can control them like this. Even here, when he got emotional and agreed to leave, he still had presence of mind to draw that Lakshman Rekha. Just because you have Vairagya doesn't mean you don't have emotions. You'll have them. You still have objective thinking. You know, not to give in to them. For example, right? And because I know your situation is similar. Sometimes that teenager, and they're usually teenagers when they say this, you're the worst mother in the world. It really hurts. It really hurts the mother to hear that. But I know quite a few mothers who will look at them and say, I am. And I'm your mother. So now deal. But if you say, how can you say that? I gave labor to you for 22 hours and you've caused me so much pain from that birth. You said, they really not listening then. Like no matter how much pain you're feeling, don't give in to your pain while talking. Afterwards, you can go cry. Afterwards, when they slam the door and go to their room, then you can sit there and cry. Most mothers will after they say, the kid says that to them. But in that moment, while you're talking, don't let the emotion get you. Now, if you're asking me how, then there's a whole book on how to create Vairagya called Bhajagovinda. Please attend Tuesday classes at Mukherjee.
Doesn't he say leave it all and devote yourself to the higher? Then you're not arguing with.
No, he says a lot. No, chup chup. Smriti, you have your hand up.
Hari Om Swamiji. I'm sorry, today is my first class, but I wanted to ask you, what would Sitaji represent? Is she also looked at as God, as Brahm, or
No, usually Ramchandraji represents Brahman.
yes,
Depending on which analogy you're looking at, and I did mention this in last class, but there's different ways that Sitaji gets represented. So sometimes Ramchandraji is Brahman, because you mentioned Brahman, I'm going that route, and Sitaji is Jiva.
Okay.
And then Lakshman is Vairagya, Hanumanji is Guru. And
Yeah.
Jiva gets taken away from Paramatma, and then Guru has to come and find you.
yeah.
And
Thank
then
you.
reconnect you back to Brahman.
Got it.
But there is other interpretations of the Ramayana where Ramchandraji represents happiness and Sitaji represents Shanti, peace. But Lakshman still represents Vairagya. And another interpretation where Ramchandraji represents knowledge, the path of Gyan, and Sitaji represents Bhakti, the path of devotion. There's another interpretation where Ramchandraji is Purusha and Sitaji is Prakriti. So I can't give you one answer to that question.
So I have to think of all those things when when I'm hearing you.
I'll usually specify which one I'm talking about.
Okay.
Today she was very much Jiva.
Jiva. I just wanted to also mention that I think it's in the Ramcharitmanas, the Chaya Sita, the shadow Sita, because you were saying in one of the interpretations. I think I've read it in that. I just wanted to mention that. The
I don't
body
think
double.
it's in Ramcharitmanas. Is it in Ramcharitmanas? No, right? No. But Guruji talks about it when Guruji teaches Ramcharitmanas. I will double check. I don't think so.
I can send a snapshot what I
Okay,
read.
and I believe you.
No,
I don't know
no.
which book you have though. I will double check. I will double check where it is.
Okay. Thank you so much. Hari Om Swamiji.
The line is not wrong.
In Valmiki Ramayana, there's no Mayavi Sita and there's no Lakshman Rekha.
So that's just it.
In Valmiki Ramayana, it's all very crude. He grabs her by the hand and pulls.
So how do we, when we're feeling an emotion, when it's building, how do we stop it before it reaches that?
How do we stop an emotion from reaching the point where the line gets blurred? We have to hold on to something because emotions drag us, right? We have to hold on to something. Usually Ishta Devata. In Kali Yuga, the easiest thing to hold on to is Ishta Devata. In Taitra Yuga, where Sitaji is, they would have held on to the sense of dharma. Today, easier for us to hold on to Ishta Devata. So we start japa straight away. The minute an emotion starts building up, we start japa straight away to calm the mind down. Then you do introspection. Even if the emotion gets very big, refuse to act on it at that point. Takes a bit of practice, but you can get there. It sounds a very high goal, but you can actually get there fairly quick. I didn't say don't have emotion. We don't need to act on it. Even today, I got really annoyed with someone. And I didn't speak to them until I calmed down. They know. I'm very clear in my communication. But I spoke sweetly. Today. To that person. I spoke to many other people not sweetly today. But that wasn't genuine anger. It's just crankiness. But you're all used to. It feels different. Anger feels different. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu nirantu, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, Ma Kaschit Kripat Bhave Asato Ma Satgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Om Purnamada Purnamida Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Shishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Shri Guru Hari Om.